Signal Sciences secures the most important web applications, APIs, and microservices of the world's leading companies. Protecting over 7,500 applications and 150 billion production requests per week, Signal Sciences Next-Gen WAF and RASP help companies increase security and maintain site reliability without sacrificing velocity, all at the lowest total cost of ownership. Signal Sciences' patented technology protects any application against any attack, with integrations into any DevOps toolchain. Signal Sciences, demand more from your WAF. Learn more at signalsciences.com/PSW. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Effectively securing your organization and its reputation requires a smarter approach. To maximize efficiency and minimize risk, security experts turn to LogRhythm, the only leading solution built solely for security teams by a security team committed to your success. With Next-Gen SIEM, user and entity behavior analytics, network traffic and behavior analysis, security automation and orchestration, and compliance, LogRhythm provides security made smarter. Welcome back, everyone, to the Enterprise Security News for this week on Enterprise Security Weekly. We've heard from our listeners, and you love our content, but are overwhelmed by the amount that we're producing. If that's you, you can go to securityweekly.com/subscribe, join the listener list, and eventually you'll be able to tell us about your interests, and we will send you notifications about content that we've published that is in your interests. We will be at Hacker Halted in Atlanta, Georgia, October 11th through 10th through the 11th, even 11th through the 10th. That'd be if we had a time machine, maybe. But EC Council is offering a 15% discount to our listeners of their bootcamp courses or workshops. Visit securityweekly.com/Hacker Halted and register today. Now, on to the enterprise security news. The first article is database security for Amazon RDS. This is talking exactly, well, maybe not exactly, but in the same vein of what we're just talking about, Jeff. And I love the statement. This was published, I think, through McAfee, or no, Sky High Networks, and who is part of McAfee now? They must be part of McAfee now or something. I think they were acquired by McAfee, because this is McAfee all over the site. In any case, they say in the article, cloud infrastructure services like AWS allow organizations to rapidly deploy, scale, and be agile where traditional database deployments do not. Pretty much the crux of the issue that we were talking about the tail end of that previous segment. Yep. And one reason why I've been looking more and more at RDS as a database solution, one, I don't have to maintain the infrastructure, right? I just have to worry about the database. And what I actually was doing some work with this week is the user management roles and security groups that surround your databases in RDS. Those can all be programmatically controlled, in addition to giving you some great control around your database. So I thought it was a good, timely article that was on my radar, and should be likely on yours as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's timely, and we probably should have emphasized maybe a little bit more. Hopefully most enterprises know by now that just moving things to whatever cloud doesn't alleviate you from a lot of responsibility for keeping things secure.
Yep, certainly. Yeah, it's a different way to implement security, right? My database sure needs to be secure, and I have to secure it myself. Or if I put it in the cloud, I have to go learn and implement all of the security controls that Amazon makes available, which are getting better and better, in my opinion, every week. So,
yeah, I agree. They hooked everybody in, and now they're playing catch up in some ways.
Sure. Infobox has unveiled a simplified security platform to detect and stop cyber threats. What I like about this is it's centered around DNS, and I think for enterprises, I've done some kind of ad hoc briefings with Infobox. On the surface, I really like their product and their approach. As again, they're really heavily focused on DNS security, have lots of appliances and solutions, and really base their detection around looking at DNS, right? And DNS gets a lot more complicated when you start talking about cloud and SD-WAN and IoT and all those things. So I think it's worth a look, and they've just updated their platform, which is nice.
Cool.
A few more. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I was just going to say I concur.
Yes. Palo Alto. This one I'm having a tough time navigating Palo Alto's products lately, and I know many of us still think of them as they're the next gen firewall company. However, they've had some acquisitions recently. They've had some product announcements that they're restructuring their entire portfolio. I think largely it's based on their acquisitions and integrating them into Palo Alto, but they're giving them newer names with different capabilities and features. Cortex is one of their platforms. Prism is their cloud security suite now, which has much more enhanced capabilities. There's Prism Access, Prism Public Cloud, Prism SaaS, and Prism VM series as well, all of which helps you virtual and cloud infrastructure apply security. We could speculate exactly how it works, but it would be pure speculation. But I think it's something to watch. Certainly what Palo Alto is doing, acquiring companies and releasing them under newer umbrella. I mean, Prism's been around. Prisma, I'm sorry, it's Prisma. I called it Prism. It's Prisma is their cloud security suite. And I think it's interesting what Palo Alto is doing. And it's certainly, when I look at the acquisitions, Jeff, they're buying up some pretty smart companies, some good companies, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting, and maybe at a higher level, not necessarily focusing on Prisma specifically. Like you said, it's kind of new. We don't have much to say about it. But, if you think a generation ago of, companies that were known for, a single thing, and Cisco immediately jumps to mind.
Yep.
And there were others, but Cisco using an example because they're sort of in the same, I think, category as, or I'd lump them together with a company like Palo Alto, where it appears at some level like Palo Alto is adopted this philosophy of becoming a one-stop shop. We can put all the different security tools into one appliance, and then we can give our customers everything they need. They don't need to go somewhere else. It'll be interesting over time to sort of, to me, it's more of like a business school study of how successful they are in their ventures.
Cisco wasn't so successful in many of their ventures,
right.
Specifically security.
Well, exactly. And every time I meet a Cisco person, I'll tease them and say, "Oh yeah, Cisco, why are they here? They're not a security company."
Mm-hmm.
And they usually shudder a little bit and chuckle maybe, and then we have a conversation about the challenges that Cisco's had in terms of image. Palo Alto's coming at it from maybe a little bit of a different viewpoint, but to me it'd be interesting to see over time what lessons they've learned from the predecessors like Cisco, and,
right.
and what are they doing materially different to I would say in this case more like retain the image of a security solution provider, but expand that into the one-stop shop sort of philosophy.
Yeah, and they confirmed my suspicions as Palo Alto has just acquired Twistlock, the container security company, as well as PureSec, which is was a serverless security company, now owned by Palo Alto. They say specifically to extend the Prisma cloud security platform. So
right,
there you have it.
Time will tell.
That's it. CyberX is launching an open development environment for securing IoT and ICS devices running proprietary protocols. Interesting that it's first an open development environment, and I really like solutions that are offering a platform for you to develop either, whether it's in the ICS space or some other type of IoT type environment, develop a secure platform. I think that concept is probably the answer to having more secure IoT and ICS devices or platforms, that exist today. Because again, when you go out to IoT, right, it's not just the device itself; it's the hardware, the firmware, the application that lives in the cloud, the application on the mobile phone, all tied together. And there's been some efforts to help provide the developers of those applications or platforms a platform to build those things securely. Microsoft had Azure Sphere, and there's been a couple of other. It sounds like CyberX is also, playing in that space of offering a more secure or a secure framework for you to develop these IoT applications.
So I have two thoughts. One is, and I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know if you have any insight, but what percentage of IoT/ICS devices, tying back to our previous discussion, are built on Microsoft platforms versus, some sort of, Linux variant? My presumption is that the vast majority are Linux or some other open source variant.
Sure.
But I suspect there's probably a fair number out there that are built on Microsoft platforms.
What's interesting is Azure Sphere, Microsoft's platform, is actually a Linux kernel as the architecture. So
right.
I think Microsoft has really made strides to be more of a software company and less of an operating system company. It's evidenced by Azure and Azure Sphere and all that kind of stuff. And CyberX says that their open development environment makes it easy for organizations to secure unmanaged IoT and ICS devices running proprietary protocols. So maybe a different take than I had, but kind of combine those two together, right? Proprietary protocols in this context need to be managed, and that's likely a gap. Certainly, I've seen my fair share. Now, to speak to the platform issue that you bring up, Jeff, is very interesting because it's like all over the map, right? Some are Windows based, some are Linux based, some are not based on Windows and Linux at all, right? It's some other type of operating system, and there's another whole class of devices that really don't have an operating system. It's really code just running right on the chip kind of thing. So that's what I think is one of the primary challenges we have with these type of devices is it's all over the map how they're implemented. So
right. My second thought is simply when I see proprietary protocol, I immediately think that people think, well, if it's proprietary, it's secure out of the box because nobody knows what it is. And given my DoD background, I sort of chuckle at that, but it looks like that's what CyberX is trying to address, the mere fact that they're trying to provide a way to secure proprietary protocols, because in my experience, proprietary protocols are just as insecure as the ones we know about out of the box. And so, but because they're proprietary, you have a harder time figuring out what they're doing, yet alone trying to figure out how to secure them. So I'm optimistic on this one.
Let's see where we want to go next. Let's talk about some company acquisitions. Imperva has purchased Distil Networks. Distil Networks is someone that we've worked with in the past here at Security Weekly. Fantastic solution for bot detection, solving problems for a lot of organizations that are looking to basically make the distinction between what is bot traffic coming at my application or my network and what is an actual person, right? They had a great solution for that. Rami Assad is the co-founder and chief product and strategy officer. He's been on the show in the past. Great bunch of people. They are now part of Imperva, which is a growing portfolio of application type security companies.
So what is Imperva known for? Do they fall into that Cisco Palo Alto category?
It's smaller, certainly, but Imperva came from the WAF. I think their first kind of standalone product as Imperva was a WAF product. And at the time, several years ago, it was known to be one of the better ones. I think the web application firewall market entirely has shifted, which could explain some of their acquisitions into getting some more, some different technology that is more strategic and more in line with the way that we secure applications today. And certainly, Distil's solutions and others in that space are critical to securing your application, right? Because if you can eliminate the bot traffic, now what you're looking at is stuff that's real, and you can apply security to it without all the noise. It's just one advantage. Also, keeping out, a lot of the attackers and a lot of more fraud type attacks from your application is also heavily plays into the bot detection arena.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just in general, these types of acquisitions. And I don't know of a good way to measure it or whether it ultimately makes a difference. But, sometimes you get the impression that companies are, they're just wildly successful and they're just trying to grow and continue to be innovative and they're doing all the right things for the right reasons. And yet there's other times, and I'm not saying these guys fit into either of these categories, but there's other times where it seems like, companies are growing and acquiring in order to stay relevant and stay afloat.
Yep.
And not that one is inherently good or bad. It's just, the things that drive them and motivate them. I think it's something for enterprises that are considering, purchasing some of their products that they're offering. It might be good to at least look into that a little bit, just if for no other reason, to get a sense of what kind of support they're going to get. Is the company on the verge of collapse and this is their last ditch effort to stay afloat?
Right.
And if you're going to invest in a product, you want to know that the company is going to be there to support you, for the legacy future. How's that?
Flexera Networks has purchased RISC Networks, and RISC Networks seems more like a IT, like SaaS management analytics company, more so than a traditional security company. And I think we've seen somewhat of a trend of this as well, as more traditional security type companies acquiring companies that more play in the more traditional IT spaces, as these two fields, continue to kind of merge together, right? That was kind of my assessment of that acquisition.
Gotcha.
In terms of funding, one of our sponsors, Recorded Future, is purchased for $780 million by Insight Partners. It's also an investor in Tenable. I think were we both there when that happened? We might have been, yeah.
Yeah, we were both there.
Yeah. So that's good for Recorded Future.
Insight Partners apparently has some money to invest in other things now.
Yeah, and this was an acquisition. I want to get Matt's take on this. We talked about Palo Alto acquiring companies and integrating it into their security portfolio. In this sense, I think of Insight Partners more along the lines of Thoma Bravo, where they're acquiring companies as more wholly owned subsidiaries, letting them operate as they normally operate, just kind of under a different umbrella. So it's a very important distinction, I think. I think much like Logarithm, right? Recorded Future will be business as usual. So.
Yep. Well, time will tell. What's always fascinated me in terms of reporting funding rounds and acquisitions like this, especially in the context of news, and it's a question I've asked Ron Gula about, since he's now very very much involved in venture capital for all intents and purposes. How do you measure the success of a company when it's, well, they just scored another round of funding versus, they actually have a steady revenue stream because they have a real product and they have real customers and people love it. And I've always sort of questioned why we celebrate so much the funding rounds and don't hear a whole lot about, not always, but often, we don't hear about what the company's actually doing. Because, in theory, companies are seeking funding so that they can expand offerings, so they can invest more in the product, improve the product that hopefully is already good. But that's not always reported in these articles of acquisition. And maybe it's just because I play in a different world. But to me, it's all, again, if I was an enterprise, I'd be looking long and hard at what the actual product is, what's being acquired or what's being invested in. And presumably a company wouldn't invest in it if they didn't think there was something good there. Right. But I think there's probably been exceptions to that rule over the years.
Yep, certainly. We were talking about the difference between a debt and an equity round today. A debt is just basically a loan. With typically, well, not typically, but a loan with no shares in the company or equity in the company, right? Equity round, you get equity in the company. Right. And it was Great Horn that announced $400-something thousand debt round, which is typically for a company to make investments in the company itself, or acquire other technology as well.
Sure.
Along the lines of what you were saying, Jeff, I really like EnSilo. I like their platform and their product and their approach to endpoint security. They just got a Series B round. I'm not sure what the funding was, but 13 million. Oh, they got a 13 million Series A, and just took a B round as well, which is good for them. It's awesome. SentinelOne got $120 million Series D, a little further along in their funding rounds. ThreatConnect took an undisclosed funding round, and Swimlane secured a $23 million round to accelerate growth. Swimlane's an interesting one because so many of the companies in that space of security orchestration and automation, or automation and orchestration, however you want to say it, have gotten acquired, right, and just become part of other larger companies' portfolios. Swimlane seems to be growing on their own so far, having just taken a round rather than get acquired. And I mean, circumstances are different in every single one of these funding rounds, IPOs, acquisitions, always different, right? I tend to like to see companies grow, take funding rounds, even go public, or get acquired by venture capital, I think, rather than getting acquired by a larger security company. As I feel like, as we were talking about before, it's kind of like a roll of the dice, what's going to happen to that really cool technology, which is typically what we'll identify here at Security Weekly, and then they get swallowed up by a larger security company or a larger company in general that's going to try and integrate them with their products. As we said with Cisco, that it didn't always work out. It doesn't always work out for other companies as well, but sometimes it does. And again, it depends on the circumstances. I like to see companies grow and flourish before they get acquired, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's a great situation too. So.
Yeah, and I have to ask, on the show notes you included an SEC Form D.
Yeah.
Was that why?
That was for, I believe that was the link that was for Great Horn for their debt.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So they didn't write about it. They just said, here's the proof.
Here's apparently. Okay. Yeah. And it was kind of like interesting why they would disclose that, I guess. Obviously, there's some positive press that we're looking to get from it, and we mentioned them on the show because of it. So, I mean, there you have it.
Interesting.
I said SentinelOne. I said ThreatConnect was an undisclosed, which is interesting. That's the same space as Recorded Future. So we see that space in threat intelligence certainly maturing, and ThreatConnect also is one of those companies that pivoted into the security orchestration and automation market as well. So that seems to be
good.
Growth.
All good. Hey, real quickly, you probably go over this all the time, but I don't presume that people know if I don't know the answer. What is generally the difference between Series A, B, C, D, or is it just simply how they nomenclate the next round?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuances in there, Jeff. In general, it's typically amount, right? The amount will increase with your series. And I think in general, your move from a seed funding round to an A round really represents kind of your first growth in the space that you're in, your first kind of big step as a company to increase your sales and marketing and increase your market capitalization in your space, and really start to cross the chasm, right? So you've worked your relationships, you've grown the company to a certain point, but to really gain wider acceptance, you have to take that first A round to grow your sales and marketing and get that market penetration. And then subsequent rounds are really to continue along that path. But again, it kind of differs. I think that later rounds will take you to a global status as an organization. They'll have you reaching into other markets globally, in addition to building a channel to resell your product is typically what will happen in later rounds as well. And it's just kind of, again, it's different every single time. But that's
and the reason I asked is because I don't see or hear too often about a Series D.
Yeah.
And that to me just makes me ask, well, why did they have to go Series D? Aren't they there yet? But like you said, maybe it's they're pushing globally or something like that.
Sure.
I'm sure it's all for a very good reason, but have you ever heard of a Series E, F, or G round? I don't know.
I think there's been Series E. Yeah, typically in those later rounds where they're getting a lot more funding, at that stage in the company's life, what I've observed over the past few years is they either get on track to go IPO and be a public company, or they don't make it to that point because they've gotten acquired. And again, that's not a bad thing, right? And then I think the more least frequently occurring event is they're taking on those later rounds and continuing forward. So,
gotcha. Very good. Thank you.
Awesome. A few more news articles in there from Morphosec, Securonix, Thycotic, and SecureAuth. This has been a marathon show, so I'll leave that to the reader. They did have some announced. Securonix is a partner program that is targeting MSSPs, which is kind of a channel style growth for a company, and something I've seen early stage and later stage companies adopt it at various points. And I think that for smaller organizations, the MSSP route I think is much better suited than trying to do everything yourself. So you're seeing a lot of that integration with either developing your product for MSSPs to adopt and provide services, or allowing an MSSP to use your product as part of their portfolio. So
cool.
That's it. That will round out the news for this week and the show. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. See you next time on Enterprise Security Weekly.